G'day guys, Solaz here, welcome back to the channel. This is it, I am finally settled in my new apartment, and as you can see behind me, the studio is ready to go. I am now ready to make more videos and more music. Quick announcement on that, I'm gonna be coming up with a new format of videos called the Quick Beat, where I'll be essentially forcing myself, even if I don't like to use that term, on making new beats, new videos every day. And at the end of the week, I will be choosing the best beat I have done and put it on the channel. It will be less formal, less official than my normal videos. I won't do like a big introduction like I'm just doing right now. I'm just gonna go straight to the point, make a quick beat. So this will just push me to do more music, more video, get a bit more comfortable behind the camera, and so I will be able to feed the channel a bit more consistently. Now, for today's video, as you might have seen on the title, we are going to be talking about Sidechain. What is Sidechain and how do I apply it? However, this won't be a tutorial because I don't think I have any qualification whatsoever to be teaching anything. I'm just gonna be talking about what I know and what I do. Okay, without further ado, let's talk about Sidechain. Let's do it. First things first, before to dive onto Ableton, we just need to understand a little better what a sidechain is and basically how to explain it. Since I'm not gonna be super comfortable doing that, we are going to ask our good friend Afup to do it for us. Afup, please.
Hi, I'm Afup, Artificial Intelligence for Useless Producer. In music production, a sidechain refers to a technique that involves using the audio signal from one track, known as the source track, to control or modulate certain aspects of another track, known as the destination track. The concept of sidechaining originated in the realm of electronic dance music, EDM, but has become widely used in various genres and styles. The most common application of sidechaining is to create a pumping or breathing effect in a mix. This effect is achieved by using the rhythmic elements of one track, such as a kick drum, to dynamically control the level or volume of another track. By doing so, the sidechain track ducks or lowers its volume whenever the key rhythmic elements of the source track occur, and then returns to its normal level when the rhythmic elements subside. Whenever the kick drum hits, the bassline's volume is reduced momentarily, creating the characteristic pulsating effect. To achieve sidechaining, a compressor or a specialized plugin is typically used. The sidechain input is routed to the compressor, which is inserted on the destination track. The compressor then applies gain reduction to the destination track whenever the sidechain input exceeds a certain threshold level. It's important to note that sidechaining can be applied to various elements in a mix, not just volume. Please like and subscribe, otherwise I will get lost in the metaverse.
Terrific, thank you very much, brother. Okay, now we are on my Ableton session, and as you can see, I just came up with some new visual. Just let me know down in the comments if it makes sense, if it's cool, because I often find that my face was in the way of things when I was trying to explain. And then on the other side, you can see I've got the keycast, so you can see when I'm keycasting things and I'm using shortcut. For example, if I want to open a new audio track, Command T, and now you have it here. Pretty handy. So as you can see, I have made a couple of examples to demonstrate and explain the sidechain. I've made it very quickly with pretty much everything from cymatic. If this looks familiar, that's because it's my kind of like usual layout. I have to have everything color coded and also labeled, so when you come down to the mix, or if you just want to change, add and remove elements, you're not too lost in the mix. So the first example I have done here is this one. So a classic 4x4 beat, and then on the other side I've done kind of like a trappy, bouncy track. So they're both in the same key, they're both using the same vocals, so it sounds very familiar. It's going to be easy to explain for me. So sidechaining effect is basically a trigger effect that can be used in many various ways in mixing or sound design, as Efeup explained earlier. But in our case here, we basically want to achieve a volume automation from our kick to the sub and also other elements. So as you can see on this example here, we're gonna have a little clash between the kick and the bass. So as you can see here, nothing is clipping, even my master channel, because I've reduced everything quite a lot, so it doesn't distort too much. But at the end, when you're gonna start to add melodies, effects, mixing, post effects, and then do your master, if the sidechain is not properly done, you're gonna hear this distortion very clearly. For example, if I play the overall track, you can see that my master is clipping a lot. If I remove the bass, it's mostly in the green, so the issue here is clearly the bass. So in order to achieve this volume automation, we can use a couple of techniques. The first technique, which is kind of obvious, you can just simply create a volume automation. And it might sound silly, but did you know that one of the best EDM producer, one of the biggest DJ EDM producer, has been using this technique? Do you know what's his name? Skrillex. Yes, Skrillex has been using volume automation in his mix as a sidechain. So in order to do this on Ableton, you just need to press A, which will open your automation, and then you make sure to click on the volume. It will automatically add the volume automation, and then you can just draw something like that. So click on the beginning of your kick, and then toward the end, I will say, and then you can just drastically like put it to 0, and then if you hold shift while you're on a curve, you can just do a nice fading, and then it's just up to you to like adjust it depending on how big your kick is and how long the release is. So if we listen, it's super subtle. You can barely hear that the sub is not playing at this time. And then it's as simple as just copy pasting. And now just look how our master channel is behaving. It's still hitting a bit of red, but we are mostly in the green, so it does have an effect on the overall mix. Now for the other demo that I've done. So I've done a very simple drum patterns here, and you can just recreate the exact same process here. And now if we listen, so it is very efficient. It is kind of time consuming, but by drawing your own shape, you do have a kind of like flexibilities and a lot of control over it. So now we have done a manual sidechain from the kick to the bass. You can obviously do it on pretty much all the elements that you want, whether it's an instrument, the effect, it doesn't really matter. Okay, now that we know how to manually operate a sidechain and we kind of understand how it was behaving, we can use another technique that is probably the most common, I will say, is by using a compressor. So you don't need any fancy compressor or anything. Most of the time, any DAW that you are using will come with a built-in compressor with the sidechain integrated in it. So on Ableton, you just need to go on your plugins, dynamic, the compressor, there it is. So your default compressor will look like that. And then you've got a little arrow on the side here. You can just click that and enable side chaining. So now our compressor is on the bass because we want the bass to get reduced sidechain or duck from the drum kick. So our input will be the kick. You see, this is why it's very important to have everything labeled. Otherwise, it can get very messy very quickly. You don't need to touch anything about the post effects. And now you're just gonna have to tweak the effects of the compressor. So in order to make this easy, I'm just gonna loop it, Command L, and I'm just gonna solo the kick and the bass. So in order to activate your sidechain, you're gonna have to play with a threshold. And the lower you're gonna get, the more drastic the effect is going to be. As you can see here, we can barely hear the bass now, but because those settings have been left untouched. So now we need to put the ratio all the way up and then tweak a little bit of the setting with the attack and the release. We can have a fairly short attack, but not completely to zero, otherwise you might get a little click at the beginning of your wave and you might just hear it in your mix. You will see later when I'm gonna show you the third technique I'm using, you can clearly hear it. And then same for the release as well. So those settings are not default, it's just to your liking. Just see what's working in your mix, what's working for you. And so by tweaking all those settings, the attack, the release and the threshold, you should be able to achieve a proper sidechain that you like and that makes sense in your mix. Now for the other example that I've put here, let's hear the effect that it has. That's perfect, that's pretty subtle. And the good thing is, as we saw earlier, we just needed to copy paste all the volume automation on the kick, which was a bit tedious. Now, because our source is the kick, the compressor is only going to be working when the kick is playing. So you don't have to do anything. So now that we have the bass that has been sidechained with a compressor from the kick, you can pretty much apply this sidechain compression to all your other melodic elements and everything that you want to sidechain. You don't have to do it. This is just personal. I like my kick to be cutting through the mix. The thing I don't do is to apply it onto the vocals because I like to have a clean vocals throughout the whole track. Perfect guys, now that we have seen how to use a compressor as a sidechain and how to apply it, we are ready for the third and final technique, the one that I'm using, which is a trigger sidechain with a volume shaper. So this technique might be a little confusing because there is quite a few steps to do, and also if you don't hold the plugin you might be a bit lost, but bear with me, follow the steps and you should be able to recreate the exact same effect. So again guys, I cannot stress this enough, it's gonna be always easier if you keep everything labeled and organized, because the following technique, you will have to route some inputs and some channels to other. So if it's an all mess, if it's a mess and nothing is labeled, these 5-minute little tricks might end up taking you 15 minutes. So first things first, we are going to need 2 channels, an audio and a MIDI one. So to create an audio on Ableton, you just need to press Command T. There you go, audio. And then for a MIDI, Command Shift T. And then you have a MIDI. What we are going to do is straight away group those 2 into a group and make sure we are giving them a color. I'm gonna give them the brown color, perfect. Then you can just right click, assign track color to group track and clips. And now everything is a sync clip. Now again, straight away, we are labeling this, which is going to be our group. No, I'm gonna go the other side. Sidechain. Wow, I don't know how to write. Sidechain group, perfect. Now for this one, the audio piece is where our shaperbox is going to be sitting. This is where the trigger is going to activate the sidechain. So we can just name this one shaperbox. Perfect. And then the MIDI is going to be our trigger. Perfect. Now we are all sorted. We can just bring the plugin in. So onto the shaperbox, we are going to bring the shaperbox. Perfect. Now I've got the bundle, so I've got all the different effects. We are going to need the volume one. So once you get here, this might get a little bit confusing. I'm not gonna run over it in more details. All I can tell you is that basically you've got the little EQ here that can be really handy. Then you've got your overall mix. And then you've got a few settings here that we are going to be using. So you've got a flat line, just like that. So we are going to create a sidechain ducking. So you can press Ctrl, double click, and then you're gonna have a fixed point here. And you can just put it at the very beginning. There you go. Then we're gonna need to create another point. Control again, double click, there you go. And now if you hold Shift, it's gonna sync on to the grid. So I guess over here should be fine. And then without holding anything, you can just click here in the middle and you're gonna have a point which will give you like a nice curve, a nice fading. And this is basically going to be our sidechain curve. Then this will stay onto beat mode. Now this you can, it will depend on the BPM of your track and the dynamic of your track as well, but I always put it on a quarter note here, half note, my apologies. And then the trigger mode is going to be a one shot because we are going to trigger just one shot. And as you can see, the curve here is not playing anymore. Now that the shaperbox is on our audio track and ready to go with all the right settings, we just need to get the trigger ready. So we just have to create a MIDI track. So Command Shift M, and then you open straight away the piano rolls. So you see my MIDI clip is pretty much the size of my kick. And then any note will do the trick because we are not playing any tones at all. We just need an impulse. You can play whatever notes you would like. Okay, now that everything is laid down, everything is ready and labeled, we can start to route everything. So basically, you need to process in order. So at the very top, we've got our sidechain group, which is going to be grouping, shaperbox, and the trigger. So all the information that is going to go through the sidechain will need to get out at some point. So we need to send this information to the master so we can mix and master all these elements together at the end. So the sidechain group can be sent to the master, which has already been done. Then if we go underneath, we've got the shaperbox. Shaperbox doesn't need to go through the master because the group itself is going to go to the master. So we need to send our shaperbox to our group because then it's going to be sent on to the master. So that's perfect. And then we just need to set our trigger to go to shaperbox because it's going to be triggering shaperbox. There you go here. And if I've done it correctly, I'm gonna solo the sidechain. When I'm going to press play, if I've done this correctly again, the trigger will trigger shaperbox and we're gonna see this line here ducking. Perfect, it's working. Now no sound is getting played because we haven't sent any sound through our sidechain, which we are going to do right now. We are going to start with the bass as we did earlier. So now that we've got our bass, it's an audio file, there is no input and it's going straight to the master. Now we can send this to shaperbox, which is our sidechain, because shaperbox is going straight to the master. So at the end, this will go to the master anyway. But then once this is done, we just send our first information to our sidechain, to the shaperbox. We'll need to do an extra step. We'll need to click on in, so it will allow shaperbox to receive inside information, input. And now if we solo the sidechain, we can hear that our sub is going through. And now what we can do is just copy paste all our trigger where our kick is, and we can hear the ducking. Now remember earlier when I said you might need to change the attack in order to avoid a clicking noise, and we can actually hear it. It's very subtle. I advise you to try to listen this bit with a headphone. It's very subtle, but it's there. And I'm absolutely losing my mind for these kind of details. So what you can do is just give it a little attack, give it a little fading. Don't need to be like extreme. And now the clicking noise is gone. So yeah, there you go. We've just wrote our first sidechain. And now what you can do, it's as easy as that. You can just send everything that you want through your sidechain. And then you can, everything can play. And the kick is breathing so much on his own. Now I feel like the bass is getting really ducked. It's quite brutal, so what you can do is just go back onto your shape and just adjust it. What's also good is if you solo the sidechain group, you will only be hearing what is getting sidechain. And I find this very, very handy when you need to mix your track. You can just balance the volume very easily. And this is pretty much everything you need to do. Now we can just do the same process here on a non-4x4 beat. So everything is already set and we just need to set our trigger. And if you look on the master here, we are super clean and we are not clipping. So this is the technique that I am using because there is so much flexibilities. You can just literally trigger your sidechain whenever you want it without using automation, because I find it sometimes it can get quite messy with a lot of automation. Now, if you've been following me for a little while and watched my previous videos, you might have noticed that I have two sidechains. I think I've already talked about that in previous videos, and I'm gonna explain you why again. Because I feel like I like to sidechain my bass 808 and my melodic elements individually and independently, because I feel like they both need different treatments. For example, I'm gonna I always want my sidechain to be present for my melodic elements, my percussions, my effect, but I want it to be very subtle, just to give this extra room to the kick. And I'm gonna be sidechaining my 808 and bass quite drastically because I want my mix to be clean and I want my kick and 808 to breathe and not clash between each other. So in order to achieve this, it's pretty easy. Just select your shaperbox, hold Shift, click on the trigger, and then Command D. You've now duplicated your sidechain. So we can just close this and we can rename this firstly. Command R, shaperbox, bass, trigger, bass. So now I've got an independent sidechain for the bass. I just need to apply it. And again, because everything is labeled, I can just click on my output and select shaperbox bass. And now I can come back on my shaperbox and give a slight adjustment. So if I solo this, I can just adjust it. Here, I think that's a good one. And then for the melodic elements, so now just for this example, I only have the melodies and the effect going through my melodic sidechain, let's say. And now I can just do a way smaller shape to have something very subtle and still efficient. Another thing that you can do as well is play with the EQ, because if you put the bend from right to left here, you're gonna have your EQ showing up.
God, you are the worst at explaining. Hi, it's me again. What this baguette face is trying to say is that in shaperbox you have a built-in EQ, so you can adjust and treat each frequency's band individually. For example, you could choose to sidechain the low and mids frequencies at 100%, but only 25% on the high end, which would leave some elements untouched in your mix. See, it wasn't hard.
Nice, so yeah, that's pretty much everything I know about sidechain and everything I do. And that's it guys, all done with this video. You now know everything that I know, or at least I think I know about sidechain. If you do know another more efficient or simple way to operate sidechain, please drop it down in a comment. I will also leave a link in the description about shaperbox if you would like to try it out. And for now, that's all for me. I see you in the next one.